Today, we invite you on an exciting journey into the world of maritime adventures. Are you ready to witness the most fascinating moments from the lives of ships and sailors? From astonishing accidents to incredible rescue operations, encounters with modern-day pirates, we'll witness how massive vessels face unexpected obstacles, how unforeseen technical failures can lead to large-scale consequences, and the surprising and amusing situations that can catch tourists off guard while on vacation, and many other captivating incidents that occurred in the world of maritime navigation. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on our future interesting compilations. Launching a ship into the water is a very responsible and dangerous process. To prevent the vessel from moving onto the water prematurely, it is secured with steel safety ropes. Just before the launch, these ropes are cut using gas cutters. This Chinese ship with a tonnage of 82,000 tons was launched into the water with the help of a dozen of balloons. They assist the boat in moving towards the water. They are installed along the entire path of the ship to facilitate its smooth sliding. Several tractors are enough to push the giant vessel. They can easily move the boat from its place. Dozens of port workers observe this process, and they monitor whether everything is going according to plan and accompany the boat to the water's edge. Pay attention to the small people against the backdrop of this ship. The most dangerous moment is when the ship enters the water. This must be done very carefully and slowly. To prevent damage to the hull during the launch, special coatings and air cushions are used to reduce the load at the points of contact between the hull and the launching platform edge. The ship is unloaded as much as possible to get rid of any excess weight, and after several checks, it can be used for its intended purpose and sent out on its long voyages. This incident took place in July 2019 at a port in Indonesia. The container ship Fortune Soul arrived from Malaysia, but something went wrong, and the ship collided with the dock. This took many workers by surprise, as they were nearby and witnessed the event. Some even started filming the ship, noticing that something was amiss. The impact caused one of the giant crane supports to fail, and within seconds it collapsed. This led to debris flying in all directions, and a massive cloud of dust rose into the air. Due to this incident, one dock worker was hospitalized with injuries, but fortunately, no one was killed. The container ship Fortune Soul itself did not sustain significant damage, nor did the cargo it was delivering. However, the port suffered severe destruction. As a result, it had to be closed for several months to dismantle the structure and address the aftermath. Periodically, ships are sent to port for cleaning. To clean the underwater part of the hull, the boat is brought to the surface. Dozens of workers are involved in this work. The first step is to get rid of marine inhabitants and their waste products that cling to the hull. They often choose ships for their habitat, so workers have to scrape off hundreds of kilograms of various mollusks, shrimps, and marine sponges. They are removed from the bottom under high pressure using compressors. Both manual and mechanical tools are used to scrape off everything unnecessary from the hull. Notice that the bottom of this boat is covered with various marine inhabitants. They are not so easy to get rid of. The spatulas are used to remove marine worms and snails. It resembles the slime that covers the bottom. Not a very pleasant process. However, if this is not done once every few years, the boat's hull will deteriorate quickly. Moreover, such fouling increases resistance during navigation. Near the village of Ballycott in Ireland lies a real ghost ship that has become a local legend and tourist attraction. This vessel was crossing the Atlantic Ocean in 2018 when technical problems caused its engines to fail. The incident occurred near the Bermuda Triangle, adding a touch of mystique to its story. All crew members were rescued, but the ship had to be abandoned. For 2 years, the ship disappeared without a trace until it washed ashore on rocks near Ireland in 2020. During this time, the vessel turned into a complete wreck, its hull covered in rust and eventually splitting in two. A fire also broke out, burning out the interior and further worsening its condition. It is currently impossible to dismantle the ship due to its legal status and high cost of the operation. Local authorities decided to leave it on the shore, where it continues to be gradually destroyed by the elements. However, the site quickly became popular among tourists and locals. The ghost ship has become the subject of numerous legends and stories. Enthusiasts venture into its remains to experience the atmosphere of abandonment and danger. They can walk across the shattered deck, descend into the hold, and explore what remains of the technical rooms, the control panel, and crew cabins. Although many items have been taken as souvenirs or scrap metal, there are still many interesting things to be found inside. Would you like to explore this ship? Let us know down in the comments below. And that's how your parcels get lost during storms. Merchant ships carrying thousands of containers with various goods. Sometimes mishaps occur and they fall into the water. This can result in millions of dollars in losses. Therefore, transportation companies insure the cargo. Some lucky ones fish out lost containers and take their contents for themselves. Although they found them out at sea, it's still considered theft. Have your parcels ever been lost? Write it down in the comments below. During a sailboat race and show in Southampton, England in 2011, a dramatic accident that frightened thousands of spectators watching the water show occurred. As the sailboats were demonstrating their skills, a massive supertanker entered the port. One of the sailboats, caught up in the competition, misjudged the speed of the approaching supertanker. The crew didn't have time to maneuver away to a safe distance. The sailboat narrowly avoided a direct collision with the supertanker's bow, and it seemed that the danger had passed. However, as the ships almost cleared each other, the sailboat's sail got caught on the supertanker's anchor. This unexpected contact tore the sail and nearly capsized the boat, which had several crew members on board. Several motorboats quickly came to assist, promptly securing the sailboat and helping to stabilize the situation. Luckily, there were no casualties or serious injuries. However, the sailboat sustained significant damage, requiring immediate repairs. During the launch of a new diesel-electric submarine in Japan, a real show was arranged. The hull of the new Tiger-class ship was adorned with flags, and hundreds of balloons were released into the sky. Traditionally, all of this is accompanied by loud horns. Inside are military personnel, and 4 soldiers serving on the new equipment decided to be on the upper deck during the launch. This is considered quite dangerous considering how sharply the submarines enter the water. But these men are obviously used to it, as they didn't even lose their balance and confidently stood on the surface of the hull. When the submarine was in the water, other sailors began to emerge on the upper deck. Not only port workers and factory workers who manufactured the submarine gathered to watch this spectacle, but also ordinary people and journalists who observed it from a safe distance. The military began to remove the flags and prepare for the first dive. Before going out into open water, everything must be thoroughly checked to ensure the complete safety of the new boat, and its crew can consist of up to 70 people. This ship was sunk off the coast of Florida to create an artificial reef. The sinking process was carefully planned. However, during the preparations, the ship began to list to the port side. Tons of seawater rushed into the hold, filling it at an incredible speed. A deck camera captured the moment the ship capsized, slowly sinking into the water before finally disappearing beneath the waves. Now, the ship rests at a depth of 33 meters, where it has transformed into an artificial reef. And here's what happens when the work is entrusted to non-professionals. A large cargo ship was supposed to be launched into the water from a steep and unsuitable slope, but something went clearly wrong. Concrete piles were used to move the ship, but the length of the vessel and the angle of the slope were not taken into account. Part of the hull first hangs in the air and then plunges downward. The hull strikes the bottom of the water with all of its force. Only a small part of the hull dips down into the water. The water cannot push it out, so the sterns end up underwater. Several people were on the deck at this time, although it is very dangerous. They had no idea what happened like this. Eventually, the damaged ship got stuck on the slope. This is what can happen when safety rules are ignored and equipment is not thoroughly checked before transporting boats. This brand new 15-meter yacht worth several $100,000 was being lifted using cables. However, something went wrong. The yacht began to sway, and the front cable couldn't bear the load, snapping under the pressure. The luxurious lot broke loose and struck the side of the cargo ship. The shocking moment when the yacht capsized and fell into the water, partially sinking, left the dock workers speechless in shock and dismay. Now, instead of a flawless vessel, they were faced with a damaged yacht requiring extensive repairs and costs to restore. This incident underscores the importance of adhering to all safety standards and checks to avoid such occurrences. When a ship enters cold waters during a freezing rain, it literally becomes icy. The entire deck is covered with a thick layer of ice several tens of centimeters thick. When the weather improves and it's safe to leave the hold, sailors have to spend hours cleaning up the ship of ice. Hammers and mallets are used to break the ice. This process is not always easy because breaking a thick layer of ice is not so simple. Shovels are used to scrape and throw ice overboard. It covers the sides, stairs, and everything on the deck. The ice needs to be constantly cleared because it adversely affects the ship's maneuverability and adds extra weight. Sometimes it's about several additional tons. Moreover, it can completely block hatches and doors. So additionally, work falls on the shoulder of sailors. Here's how farmers transport hundreds of buffaloes by sea. The deck is covered with straw and divided into pens with makeshift bamboo fences. To keep the animals calm, they are constantly fed. Meanwhile, handlers are stationed around the perimeter to ensure that none of the buffaloes fall overboard. This ship is about to hit the water in a moment. It is held only by a steel cable. One of the workers cuts it and the ship starts sliding down special blocks. According to the tradition, while the ship is moving towards the water, fireworks are launched and bagel lights are lit. Some workers accompany it on the way and run after it. This ritual is performed in many ports for good luck. The ship smoothly and easily enters the water. This is an unusual high-speed vessel that moves with the help of hydrofoils. As a result, its hull appears to fly above the water's surface, leaving water sprays behind, much like a jet ski. Such hydrofoil vessels are usually smaller in size and don't have fully enclosed decks. It might seem like a massive ship is speeding across the water, but it's actually about 30 meters long. In some ports, lateral launching is performed. Special supports are placed under the ship's hull for this purpose. Several workers release the securing blocks. When everything is ready, the ship slides into the water. At first, it may seem like the ship could overturn, but it quickly stabilizes and levels out. Sailing isn't exactly a safe activity. This man nearly found himself in the sea when his boat almost capsized. During the movement, the sailboat began to sharply tilt to one side, narrowly avoiding a full capsize. Water splashed onto the deck, soaking the sailor. He was greatly frightened when he nearly went overboard. What saved him was a safety net and the ropes he managed to grab onto. Do you enjoy active water sports? Let us know down in the comments. Cruise liners need to be painted from top to bottom to look like new. However, this task is not so simple. The ship is brought into a port. First, the old paint layer needs to be removed. Workers on lifts first scrape off the white paint. It needs to be done down to bare metal. This takes several days. Notice how quickly the unpainted hull starts to rust. The metal is then treated again by removing a thin top layer. A special anti-corrosion mixture and primer are applied. The hull is marked with the ship's name. Then, painting can begin. The hull is painted in several layers using the same lifts. Workers use rollers and sprayers. The ship's design is changed by painting the hull in different colors. The bottom traditionally remains red. They also don't forget about the waterline to see the level of immersion. In a few weeks, the renewed ship can set sail again. The dry dock is filled with water, and the liner is ready to welcome its passengers. This port worker decided to film a video for his wife of a ship being launched into the water and accidentally captured an accident. At first, everything was going well and the bow gradually entered the water. Large metal cylinders are used for the launching of the ship to slide into the water without damaging the hull. However, as the ship was entering the water, it began to lean to the starboard side. Within seconds, it capsized. There were a few crew members on board who had to jump into the water or climb onto the ship's surface. It's unclear why this happened and who was to blame, but it's clearly not the fault of the workers who witnessed the accident. Just look at their smiles and joy. They began taking photos in front of the ship, clapping and laughing like children. Even in unpleasant moments, one can find positivity. This new transportation ship of a company engaged in timber transportation caused a small tsunami when it was launched into the water, flooding the pier. The ship, weighing several hundred tons, caused a minor disturbance. Fortunately, there were no people nearby. Such waves could easily knock someone off their feet. It's better to stay away during these launches. A group of friends decided to go on a sailing trip, but their boat started to sink. The hull was completely submerged underwater. Such boats are made from materials that don't sink, so they were in no danger, except for getting their things and gear wet. But just look at how calm these guys are. As their boat began to turn into a floating swimming pool, they recorded videos and joked around. Maybe this isn't the first time it's happened to them. A Chinese coal transport boat was launched into the water at one of the ports. One of the crew members decided to stay on a deck, strolling near the captain's bridge. Quite a dangerous pastime as the 70-meter-long boat rapidly descends from a steep drop. At first, it seems like the boat might get stuck, but eventually it fully enters the water. Would you risk being on the deck during a ship launch? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This incident occurred near Australia between the Japanese whaling ship Yushin Maru 3 and the Sea Shepherd Organization's ship, which is dedicated to protecting marine resources. Environmentalists try to confront and obstruct whalers, but sometimes it becomes extremely dangerous. The activist's ship was initially driven away by a water jet from a hydrant. However, that wasn't the end of it. The whaling ship made a sharp turn and rammed the activist's boat. The video clearly shows that this wasn't an accident or mishap, but a deliberate action. Just look at the damage the boat sustained. Its bow was completely destroyed by the impact. The whalers simply continued on their way without offering any assistance. On the sinking boat, several people were seriously injured by the collision. One activist had 2 broken ribs. Fortunately, the sinking ship was rescued by the crew of the Bob Barker, who were passing nearby. All the victims were saved. The ship failed to reduce speed before entering the port. The crew didn't realize this, so attempting to turn was too late. There wasn't enough space for a full stop, so the ship warns everyone in the coastal area of danger with a horn. Within seconds, the hull pushes the moored boats and moves several tens of meters onto the pier before stopping. A huge wave floods everything around it. The boat's bottom was damaged. Meanwhile, the port workers who witnessed the accident didn't even move. They stayed calm and sat and watched. Perhaps they have seen such scenes before. Sometimes unloading cargo from ships doesn't take place at a port using special equipment, but directly into the water. This large barge delivers timber to Canada, where it's used to make paper pulp, cellulose, and wood for furniture. Hundreds of tons of logs are loaded onto special ships that transport them to the required location. However, unloading all of this equipment is quite time-consuming. Moreover, they can be damaged during unloading and dumping logs onto the dock. If it's necessary to keep them as intact as possible, this method of dumping them into the water is used. The barge has a special tilting mechanism. At first, it might seem like something is going wrong and the ship is sinking, but in reality, this is a regular unloading process. It's slow enough to be done carefully and safely. When the logs are dropped, the barge is moved to the other side by the current. Several boats monitor this process, sometimes to prevent the logs from drifting too far due to the current. A special restraining cable is stretched across the water. If a few logs don't fall into the water, workers have to go out on a deck to manually drop them. This is quite dangerous work, so everything is done according to instructions and under the supervision of colleagues who can assist if needed. Once the logs are in the water, the current carries them to receiving points where they are retrieved from the water and sent for processing. The container ship Tasman has undergone inspection and was being repaired at one of the ports in the Netherlands. After that, it had been launched back out into the water. There isn't much space in this port, so tons of water flooded the coastal area. A small tugboat pulls the giant boat after launch to stabilize it because the waves could damage the ship's hull against the port shore. The launch is accompanied by the traditional horn. Tasman has been carrying thousands of containers on each of its trips for 24 years. A fishing vessel started to flood due to turbulent waves. The crew members went up to the deck to try and do something, but the elements took over. The rough waves submerged part of the deck, flooding the hold and causing the ship to gradually sink. This situation is quite dangerous for the crew members standing below. The waves could knock them off their feet and throw them overboard, so they held onto a taut rope. The crew donned life jackets and began calling for help from the nearby vessels, as at any moment the boat's weight could become critical, causing it to sink. Fortunately, that didn't happen, although the ship was significantly submerged. Just look at how deeply it was immersed. The midsection of the hull was completely underwater. Another ship came to their aid, and all 7 fishermen and crew members were evacuated to safety. And here's the launch of the new British cargo ship Scott Explorer. It was built in 2019 and is 90 meters long. Its launch was accompanied by applause and the traditional smashing of a champagne bottle against the hull. Hundreds of people came to see the ship set sail for the first time. A special mechanism on which the ship stands descends into the water along special rails. The yellow platforms sink, but the next ship leaves the port. They are retrieved from the bottom for reuse. The ship has successfully transported various cargoes between European countries for the past 5 years. The cargo ship Estagante, carrying 64 cars from Japan, encountered a severe storm that seriously damaged both the ship and its cargo. The ship's deck was covered with a thick layer of ice due to low temperatures, making it difficult to secure the cargo. By the end of the storm, only 12 cars remained, but calling them intact would be an overstatement. All of these cars sustained significant damage, broken bumpers, shattered glass, and large dents on their bodies. It looked as if they had all been in a massive car accident. Although the storm had ended, the sea remained rough. The ship was still being rocked and the cars were sliding across the icy deck, constantly crashing into each other. A video taken by the crew captured the moment that one car fell and crashed into another, causing it to slide off the deck and disappear into the sea foam. This video became a vivid illustration of how merciless the sea can be to cargo. The crew could do nothing but watch this merciless spectacle, documenting the events on camera. The car owners who had signed documents allowing deck transportation at their own risk received an unpleasant surprise. Their cars, which they had expected to receive in pristine condition, ended up battered or sunk on the bottom of the ocean floor. In the Arctic waters, where the temperature reaches -40 degrees, ships moored nearby can literally freeze due to freezing rain and snow. The water that hits the hull instantly turns into ice, and the ice layer can reach several tens of centimeters. Icebergs can be several meters high. Water accidents are quite common. They often come as a surprise. What could possibly go wrong on a calm lake in beautiful weather? That's what this man thought as he was fishing from a boat in the middle of the water. Instead of catching a fish, he snagged some seaweed, but that wasn't his biggest misfortune of the day. He noticed a jet ski speeding towards him. The fisherman froze for a few seconds in surprise. The jet ski driver only attempted to turn away at the last moment to avoid the collision. However, the crash was inevitable. Both ended up in the water and their vessels were damaged. Do you enjoy fishing? Why don't you share your thoughts down in the comments below? The launch of this huge ship was captured from a drone. Just look at how small the people are against the backdrop of the new vessel. Such a launch can only be done in adapted maritime ports. The process must be as smooth as possible. Overloading the hull in certain places should be avoided to prevent damage. Therefore, the rails are submerged underwater for tens of meters. This is the most responsible stage after the ship's construction. One mistake could cost millions of dollars. Future crew members and shipbuilders stand on the ship's bow, celebrating the successful launch and being 100% confident in their work. When the ship is fully submerged and drifts away for a sufficient distance, tugboats approach it to turn it in the right direction. A dangerous activity was devised for tourists in French Polynesia where surfing is popular. Hundreds of tourists and athletes visit this place, as it is ideal for surfing due to its waves. In boats, tourists can go out to sea to watch the large waves and experience them firsthand. It's an unforgettable experience, but it is quite dangerous, as there are risks that the boat could capsize or a wave could throw tourists overboard. The moment when the wave hits this boat, most people don't even hold onto the handrails, filming it on their phones instead. It's interesting to think about how many phones have ended up at the bottom of the sea after such tourist adventures. This video is a good example of why you shouldn't be nearby during a ship launch. The woman who decided to capture this event on a video had no idea that huge waves and planks would fly in her direction. Luckily, she survived, although it could have ended tragically for her. Two yachts collided in the Red Sea. There were many tourists on board. When the people on the deck realized an accident was about to happen, they began to run as far away as possible. One of the yachts suffered severe damage and was left with a broken upper deck, where several dozen vacationers had been sitting. Fortunately, no one was seriously injured. The incident resulted in damage to the vessels, some scared passengers, and a few bruises. This is why you need to be cautious not only on the roads, but also in the open ocean. The work of sailors is not only hard, but also dangerous. Just look at how buoys are dropped into the water. Before a cargo weighing several tons falls into the water, the chain must be properly laid out to avoid entanglement when falling. Approaching such a chain is strictly prohibited, as they might move at a high speed and can easily knock someone off their feet and cause some serious injuries. So sailors try to stay away during the dropping of cargo into the water. This work has to be done both day and night, regardless of the weather. This is how giant anchors weighing tens of tons are also retrieved. Typically, large ships and tankers have several anchors located in different parts of the ships. Their shapes vary as well. It all depends on the characteristics of the ship and the specifics of the seabed. They usually have an asymmetrical shape. Separate engines and systems are used to lift them, gently and carefully raising the cargo without damaging the ship's hull. This couple decided to take photos and shoot a nice video during their vacation, but things didn't go as planned. A wave nearly threw them overboard. In the United States, the launch of new ships onto the water is accompanied by celebrations and various shows, attracting thousands of people. During the launch of Kirby 185-01, Boy Scouts and the National Orchestra were invited to the event. They played violins and drums for the spectators. Many children wanted to see this with their own eyes, as witnessing a massive ship with a capacity of over 100,000 tons entering the water is not an everyday occurrence. Dozens of journalists filmed the event. Before the launch, a champagne bottle was smashed against the hull. Upon the signal, the mechanism for the launch was activated, and the ship began to move towards the water at a rapid pace amidst a shower of applause. Many people filmed it on their phones. At this time, small boats and vessels at a safe distance greeted the new ship. When the ship was in the water, a concert with live music and various entertainments was arranged for the spectators. Balloons were released into the sky until tugs turned the new ship around. This ship experienced an engine failure, forcing it to make an emergency stop at a port. The video was shot by eyewitnesses in 2005 in Canada. Since the engine wasn't working, the crew couldn't stop the ship quickly. It continued moving and rammed into several boats docked in the bay. This accident caused millions of dollars in damage. Several boats sank and had to be recovered from the bottom. But the most tragic part is that 2 people died as a result of this incident, and several others were injured. This incident occurred at one of the port terminals in Bangladesh in October of 2021. The ferry Ahmad Shah, which was carrying automobiles, was supposed to dock at the shore, but something went wrong from the first moments. The ship's crew and port workers noted that the vessel started tilting to one side, losing its balance. It collided with the port's docks, causing panic amongst the workers who feared the ship might capsize. They quickly opened the ramp and began an emergency evacuation. However, due to the tilt of the ship, the ramp couldn't align properly with the edge of the port. The drivers inside the truck decided to take the risk and leave the ferry. The first 3 trucks managed to disembark. Meanwhile, passengers aboard the ferry were quickly evacuating the vessel. The driver of the 4th truck got stuck while trying to disembark and ended up hanging over the water. In the nick of time, he decided to abandon the vehicle. Meanwhile, the ship began tilting sharply and taking on water. It took only a minute for the ship to capsize, plunging the truck into the water. 13 cars and 16 motorcycles were left on board, all of which fell into the water. Dozens of people, both passengers and crew members, were trapped on board. Some started climbing onto the overturned ferry's top. Several people fell into the water and began swimming to the shore. Meanwhile, there was strong panic on the shore. People were screaming and unsure of what to do or how to help the victims. Some people on board found themselves trapped. Rescuers on the shore started throwing life jackets to them. People jumped in the water to help passengers who couldn't swim. The 1,000-ton ferry almost became a grave for many people. Fortunately, there were no casualties. It was later revealed that the ship was old and defective. Due to negligence, it was allowed to sail with serious damage to its hull, leading to the capsizing. During a flood caused by a typhoon in the Philippines, several boats and barges collided and crashed into the supports of a bridge. They got stuck and turned the bridge into a real dam. The water level began to rise and the ships started to flood. Equipment and belongings that were on board fell into the water. At the time, there were crew members on the vessel. Some of them ended up in the water. Miraculously, the bridge supports withstood the load and did not collapse. However, this flood caused significant damage and human casualties. Orcas are not only majestic and beautiful marine creatures, but also very dangerous for sailors. Fishermen witnessed an orca leaping out of the water and hitting one of the boats. A man fell overboard, and the boat capsized. To witness the launch of the new ship El Kakwi, all workers and ordinary people gathered at the port. This exciting spectacle was captured on phones and cameras. It was decided to forego the formalities usually held during such events. However, traditional ship horns and greetings from other boats in the port were still present. When the platform descended, the ship instantly found itself on the water, causing a huge wave. Some believe that during the sideways descent, the ship might capsize. But in reality, this is harder than it seems, as the ship descends at a slight angle. To prevent the ship from drifting further than necessary due to inertia, several safety ropes are used. One of them was under such tension that it couldn't withstand the load and snapped. Only smoke, as if from a shot, could be noticed. Nearby, 3 tugs were ready. Once the ship stabilized, they began to approach to pull the ship out of the port. In tight conditions, the enormous ship cannot move on its own, so maneuverable boats assisted. Although against the backdrop of the new ship, they seem tiny, they have no trouble getting moving, turning and directing the giant machine. This man decided to take a ride in a motorboat on a body of water. He gained high speed and lost maneuverability, causing the boat to crash into a pier near the shore. As a result, the boat was smashed and the driver was injured. In this situation, airbags or a seatbelt could have reduced the injuries. Notice how the bow of the motorboat splits into 2 parts. Repairing the boat after such damage would be more expensive and difficult than buying a new one. To access the bottom of ships, it's not always necessary to send them to a port. In cold waters, they use the freezing of vessels. They wait until the ship freezes and gradually remove the top layer of ice. The ice is melted or cut with chainsaws or manual tools. This is a very difficult and lengthy process. It can take from several weeks to several months until the required part of the hull is assessed. Typically, access is needed to screws and the steering part to repair or replace it. Ice blocks are manually thrown out of the icy trench. Entire rooms are cut under the required part of the ship where repairs will be carried out. The main thing is to not rush and let the next layer freeze well so that the workers don't fall into the water. Air spaces under the ice carry a particular danger. If the water is not frozen to a sufficient depth, the ice can crack underfoot. During freezing, all available tools are used. These are usually hand drills, hammers, axes, chisels, and much more. Fans are used to speed up freezing, helping to drive cold air under the ship and even fire extinguishers. This process resembles the work of miners, but instead of coal and rocks, it's ice. This barge crashed into a ship at high speed. Despite its small size, the barge caused significant damage. The ship's hull was punctured, forcing it to stop its voyage and head to the dock for repairs. Some ports where large cargo ships are launched into the water, such as the Arklow Castle, are located near roads. During the launch, traffic is temporarily blocked. When the ship enters the water, a massive wave floods the coastal area. This is not your typical emergency medical vessel launch. It was flipped upside down before being released from the restraints. Note that there is a crew member inside at the time. It might seem like an extraordinary adventure for him, but in reality, it's just another workday. At one point, the ship is released and lands on the water. The man inside smiles and signals that everything is fine. The launch of the cargo ship Asvigel in 2022 was a significant event in Norway, and no wonder, as this giant almost 120 meters long has hybrid engines. In addition to traditional fuel, it has electric motors that allow it to sail without harmful emissions being sent out into the atmosphere. Thousands of people gathered to witness the launch onto the water. Politicians and officials of various ranks, entrepreneurs, stars, and ordinary people came to the port to celebrate the event. Before the launch, a show was organized with performances in national costumes, dances, and songs. They smashed a bottle of champagne against the hull. The final preparations by the team responsible for the launch. Workers removed dozens of safety blocks from under the bottom and detached additional ropes. This is a dangerous process. Although all actions are clearly planned, everything can go wrong at any moment. Workers rush to a safe place. To start the mechanism, they pressed a special button and the ship begins to slide into the water. Under the applause of the spectators, huge waves flood the port. The ship has a capacity of 11,000 square kilometers and can carry hundreds of tons of cargo without polluting the atmosphere. This is the launch of a new ship in the Dutch port town of Goingzaan. There is a shipyard of the shipbuilding company Royal Bedoes. Every time a new ship is launched, local residents come to watch. Some climb out of the fence to have a better view during the ship's launch. When the ship is launched into the water, the spectators are amazed by what they see and take photos for memory. In 2018, a serious incident in the Bosphorus in Istanbul attracted the attention of not only local residents, but also numerous tourists. The 225-meter-long Vita Spirit was headed to port when its rudder suddenly jammed. This technical malfunction led to the loss of control over the ship. The vessel uncontrollably passed under the Bosphorus Bridge and crashed into a historic mansion on the shore, almost completely destroying it. The mansion was an architectural monument built in the 19th century. It had stood on the shore for many years and was a vivid example of Ottoman architecture. This building was a popular spot for tourists and locals alike. At the time of the accident, many tourists nearby witnessed the event and recorded their visit on cameras. Fortunately, no one was injured, although there were people inside the mansion. The walls couldn't withstand the powerful impact of the ship, and the building, which had survived for centuries, was destroyed in an instant. The damage was so severe that restoring the mansion became nearly impossible. Not far from the accident site, several dozen people were relaxing in a cafe on the shore. When they noticed the massive ship uncontrollably heading toward them, they panicked and began to flee the building. People ran outside, leaving their belongings behind with only one thought in mind: to save themselves. Some stayed inside, recording the incredible moment when the ship crashed into the shore. The Vita Spirit cargo ship was built in 2001 and had a good reputation, but this incident highlighted the importance of the careful monitoring of the technical condition of vessels. Cleaning large ships manually is extremely difficult and time-consuming. To simplify the task, special robots are often used. They are capable of moving along the side and even the bottom of the ship's hull. For cleaning, they release water under high pressure. This process is controlled by an operator using a special remote control. This eliminates the need for using lifts and manual tools. Moreover, it is not necessary to bring the ship into a port to perform the cleaning. Some models can work underwater, so the ship doesn't need to be brought into the surface to reach the bottom. The operator responsible for cleaning sees the robot's hull-mounted camera feed. This significantly simplifies the cleaning process and makes it much cheaper, since there is no need to spend resources on lifting huge ships or draining water in special docks. Small yachts are launched onto the water using hoists. They are secured with special straps. However, this time something went wrong and the yacht worth $100,000 fell and capsized. It's interesting how the owner explained this afterwards. Repairing the yacht and getting it back in shape after such an incident would require tens of thousands of dollars. The Andrea fishing vessel had finished its catch and was returning to a port in the Netherlands. The skipper and the rest of the crew were resting below the deck, while the ship was being steered by a single sailor. Coming towards them was the Alexander von Humboldt ship, which had 59 people on board. The two vessels were on a collision course, and the crew members of the Alexander von Humboldt noticed the danger. They began signaling the fishing boat to warn the impending catastrophe, using radio communications and continuous horn signals. However, the Andrea did not respond appropriately. Panic began to rise on the Alexander von Humboldt. The crew of the fishing vessel only started to change course and reduce speed when they were mere meters away from the other ship. They nearly avoided a collision, but the two ships still made contact. The Andrea sustained only minor scratches, while the Alexander von Humboldt suffered damage to its deck. The railing was destroyed and the ship required repairs. Despite the relatively minor damage, the incident caused significant stress for all involved. The crew member of the fishing vessel who failed to make timely action to prevent the collision was found responsible for the incident. He had to pay over £8,000 for the damages. During docking into the port of Cozumel in Mexico, the cruise liner Carnival Glory collided with the Carnival Legend. The ship was maneuvering but misjudged the speed and distance to the neighboring vessel. Several hundred people from the other ships and the shore witnessed the accident. Passengers on the Carnival Glory peered from the upper decks, watching as the bow of the other ship damaged the hull. There were several thousand passengers on board both ships. Most didn't even suspect the horrifying noise and jolts. A few people received medical attention as a result of the collision, but fortunately no one sustained any serious injuries. However, the two liners didn't fare so well. The bow of the Carnival Legend could withstand a heavy load, so repairing it wouldn't require much time or money. To avoid canceling the voyage entirely, the ship was inspected, and within a day, when passenger safety was ensured, the journey resumed. This wasn't the case, however, for the culprit of the accident. A significant portion of the hull was damaged, resulting in damages reaching several $1,000,000. Due to this incident, the voyage had to be canceled, and the ship sent for urgent repairs. Icebreakers are specialized vessels designed to forge paths through ice fields in seas and oceans for other vessels. They are used in Arctic and Antarctic regions where icy conditions can be particularly challenging. A regular ship cannot break through the ice without damaging its hull. Icebreakers have engines with a power of 75,000 horsepower. The largest of these ships were equipped with nuclear reactors, allowing them to navigate in icy zones for long months without refueling. Some icebreakers even host tourists, although this is an expensive pleasure. Tickets to the Arctic cost anywhere between $40,000 and more. It's not affordable for ordinary tourists. However, for such a price, you can reach the North Pole. Would you like to go on such a cruise? Let us know in the comments below. Icebreakers often support scientific expeditions, participate in the search and extraction of natural resources, and can be involved in rescue operations when ships need to be freed from ice captivity. But their most common function is to clear a path for other boats. Notice how tiny the boats look compared to the nuclear icebreaker. No wonder they couldn't overcome these obstacles on their own. During a powerful storm, a Spanish cargo ship was thrown onto a rocky shore near the coast of the Basque country close to France. The storm's force was so great that the waves towered over the massive ship. Observe how the enormous waves tossed the vessel around like a toy. At the time, crew members were on board, and one can only imagine what they felt as their ship crashed and their lives were put in danger. A helicopter was immediately dispatched to rescue the 12 crew members. The rescue operation was incredibly difficult and dangerous because the ship kept moving and crashing against the rocks. The situation was further complicated by strong winds, which made the operation even more perilous. Notice the rescuer on the cable, who was repeatedly lifted and lowered, unable to approach the ship due to its unpredictable movements. Despite all the difficulties, all the sailors were saved and brought to safety. However, the situation on the ship deteriorated rapidly. At one point, its hull could no longer withstand the stress and broke in half. Flooding was prevented by sturdy bulkheads that slowed the water's entry into the hold. However, it was impossible to save the ship. It had sustained critical damage. Unfortunately, this giant ship has now turned into a pile of scrap metal, abandoned on the shore. Modern maritime pirates pose a significant threat to sailors and merchant vessels in various parts of the world. They employ various tactics to board and seize ships. Typically, a group of heavily armed criminals approaches the ship on a motorboat and attempts to quickly board it. If they succeed, it poses a threat to the crew's lives and causes substantial losses. Pirates either steal cargo or demand a hefty ransom. That's why various methods are employed to protect against pirates in dangerous areas. Sometimes professional security and the services of private military companies are hired. The security team timely noticed the approaching boat and opened warning fire. Several military personnel positioned themselves around the perimeter to repel the attack. Notice the barbed wire along the side of the ship. This is one of the methods of protection against pirates. This time, they managed to deter the criminals, leaving them empty-handed. However, not all attacks can be repelled. During planned assaults, several boats immediately surround the merchant vessel. Dozens of pirates board and take hostages. They may demand hundreds of thousands of dollars from the ship owners and transportation companies. They have no choice but to pay the ransom. Various means are used to defend against the attacks. Sometimes corridors and staircases are blocked with barbed wire. Axes are even used to intimidate the raiders. Pirates often pretend to be just ordinary people in distress. However, experienced sailors cannot be fooled, as they are aware of the danger. Jet skis are often deployed in defense. Several guards in bulletproof vests and helmets with cover fire use fire hydrants to keep the pirates at bay. They also prevent pirates from approaching the ship. This is a planned sinking of the cargo ship Stellar Banner, which ran aground and sustained hull damage. Fortunately, none of the crew members were harmed in the incident. Despite all efforts, the ship could not be saved. The cargo and fuel were removed to avoid any environmental disaster, and it was decided to sink the ship nearby, as towing it to the nearest port was impossible due to significant damage. This operation was carefully planned and prepped. Numerous environmental organizations and the Brazilian Navy were involved. The preparation took almost 3 months. The sinking itself turned out to be a real spectacle. The ship gradually submerged in the water, and the process, which started with the bow tilting downward, seemed controllable and predictable. However, when the bow began to go under, air under great pressure escaped from the hold, creating the impression of a massive explosion. Water quickly filled the forward compartments, causing the stern to lift. The ship almost stood upright and then sank rapidly. The entire process took only a few seconds. The spray of water and air bursting the surface resembled a volcanic eruption. The military observers were impressed by how dynamic the event was. After the sinking, special tugs and ships monitored the area for oil spills, carefully ensuring that no parts of the ship or fuel surfaced. In Baltimore, USA on March 27th, the 300-meter container ship Dali collided with a support pillar of a road bridge. In an instant, the 2.5-kilometer structure collapsed into the water. The ship itself got stuck under the debris. Investigators are currently underway to determine how this could have happened. Among the main causes are loss of ship control and negligence. As a result of the accident, several people ended up in the icy water. These were workers repairing the road on the bridge. 2 people were immediately rescued, but unfortunately 6 perished. There could have been many more victims if it weren't for the repairs on the bridge. Workers received an alarm signal from the ship and blocked traffic off to the bridge, saving dozens of lives. Cleaning is necessary not only for ships, but also for ports where they are built and repaired. Workers scrape off deposits from the walls, remove debris and details left at the bottom after repairs. If this is not done, it can damage other ships. To do this, port locks are closed and the water is completely pumped out. After that, dozens of workers descend and begin the work. To clean the walls, mountaineering equipment and special machinery can be used. If there's no way to pump out water into the port, divers take care of the cleaning. They dive to the bottom in special gear. Algae, various marine creatures, and debris are removed using high-pressure water jets. Working on tugboats is extremely dangerous. They have to tow huge ships and perform complex maneuvers. Accidents sometimes happen. This tugboat was towing the barge North Arm Express, which was carrying fuel. However, during the maneuver, the ship began to list to the right. The captain attempted to change course and pull ahead of the barge to stabilize the ship, but it was too late. The barge capsized and sank in an instant. The captain and 2 assistants initially tried to move to the higher points of the tugboat until they realized that the ship would overturn. They ended up in the water. Another sailor was inside, but he managed to escape from the ship through an open emergency hatch. Fortunately, everyone was rescued. To avoid such situations, tugboats are equipped with an emergency release system for mooring lines, and this tugboat almost capsized during the maneuver. The captain executed an emergency release of the mooring line, which helped stabilize the boat in time and preventing it from overturning. In October 2018, a serious accident in the port of Barcelona attracted the attention from both locals and international media. The passenger liner Roro collided with a port crane, causing significant destruction. The incident occurred due to the loss of control over the vessel, which was unable to stop in time. A slight nudge from the massive liner was enough to knock the crane off its position. At the time of the collision, workers were present on the pier. Seeing the uncontrolled vessel approaching, they fled, trying to escape the danger. Thanks to quick reflexes and some luck, none of the workers were injured. The liner sustained only minor dents on its bow. However, the crane could not withstand the impact and collapsed, crashing to the ground with great force. The fall of the crane caused an explosion and ignited fuel and flammable material stored nearby. The fire quickly spread. Rescue services and crew members were immediately called to the scene. The collapse and fire destroyed other equipment on the pier and several dozen containers with goods waiting to be shipped. This tugboat, Mighty Martha, is truly mighty. The vessel is capable of easily pushing 40 coal-filled barges. The depth of each barge is approximately 3 meters. Just imagine how powerful this ship is. And this is the process of coal transshipment in one of the ports near the mining company. Such transportation is quite a responsible process because it's challenging to maneuver the interconnected barges. Nearby, you can notice another ship pushing back empty barges, which will be filled with coal. Cruise liners usually plan their routes very precisely to avoid storms. However, everything cannot always be predicted. This ship encountered a gale near Norway. The wind reached a speed of 38 meters per second. The ship started to sway heavily. The liner had to urgently change its route and sail to the nearest port. Special services had to be called in to evacuate the passengers and provide assistance in case of an emergency. Which video has impressed you the most? Let us know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and support us. We'll be back with another set of exciting videos soon. Stay tuned and see you next time.